What's up there, everybody? Hope y'all are well. Today, we talking about coaching teachers. What does that mean for education? But also, what does that mean for the community? Come back with us. Go. See, you got to unmute yourself, brother. You
I'm
know what I'm
on
saying?
mute. I'm saying welcome. Just like John Oliver, everybody, welcome to the South Star Classroom, coming to you every Friday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We have an incredible topic to talk with you all about today. Not just teacher coaching, but coaching in the educational realm and sphere. But look, before we get into that heavy topic and something that we all care about, we got to check in with everybody. We got our permanent guest with us, now a full-fledged member of the South Star Classroom. We got Jubilee Ransom with us. Jubilee, how's it going? Because ladies first, I'm from the South.
I mean, listen, it's okay. I do appreciate it. I believe that chivalry and that kind of honor is not dead. Another show, another topic.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good topic, because our young man, we got to start teaching them again.
I mean, there was a whole thing going around about, I'm 41, so there's women that are like, don't call me ma'am. I don't want to be called ma'am. I'm like, call me ma'am, because there's a whole bunch of other things you could call me that I just wouldn't want to answer. So call me ma'am, honey. Okay.
That's right. Don't me that. But how was your week? What's going on with you?
All is well. All is well in Ransom Land. It's been cold out here, but I have been inside for the most part, just grinding and reading and building. My son called me one day. Well, Monday I had meetings like all day, so I was out all day. And he asked me to give him a call. I'm like, well, I'm in a meeting. I got 3 minutes. So I FaceTime him, and he plays me the song that he learned in his guitar lesson, singing and playing the guitar for the first time. I'm going to take my on the Old Town Road. I was like, oh my God, I'm crying. It was
ain't nothing like some Little Nas X.
Oh my
to really
goodness.
Make one feel extraordinarily sentimental, man. That song and that man, it's haunting everybody. People talk about what's haunting you. My boy's got this podcast. He calls it the zeitgeist. What haunts you? And I'm like, that song, man, it's consistently in my head. So that's amazing. That's very cool.
That's one of the highlights of my week.
Oh, that's beautiful. Up on our top left, we got the beard of knowledge. We got the man who's in a stand-up comedy routine right now with that brick wall behind it. We got the man who knows everything, Mr. David Castillo, fifth generation
left?
Texan. Top right, man. He's in the top right of my
Your
corner.
other left? What's in that cup, man? We see what you got over there. What's in that cup?
I got that syrup, man.
Oh, man, I need some.
You need some syrup in your life, man. That's what the kids be drinking. This is just some wine, man. I'm sophisticated. David, what's up, man? How's your week going?
It's going well. Things are definitely picking up on the work front, making a lot of connections, going out, being a consultant. So I'm speaking about my independent consultant work. I'm still learning the craft of getting your hustle on. Not something that I've always been good at, but I think I'm getting better. A lot of phone calls, got some new contracts, and we'll talk about this later, but I look forward to what we have coming up as a team to take on some of these really big, large scale projects with the expertise that the four of us can bring to the table for schools.
That's right.
And then, yeah, for sure, as a South Star Classroom. And then yesterday at school pickup for my son, they have the school has a big PE yard, and the kid, the last PE class is kind of slowly coming in off the field. There's a bunch of kids, are out there. It's a big, very big field. And I'm looking around. I park right next to the field as I'm waiting for my son. And I didn't see any adult supervision. Like, I'm a big stickler for adult supervision, even, any grades, especially.
Oh, here it comes, man. Here it comes. I can't wait to hear it, man. Here comes Papa Castillo.
You just got to have an adult out there, Yeah. So I'm sitting in the car and I'm looking out at a group of boys, and that, you know, they're like pushing each other, and like it started to get a little physical.
A little roughhousing.
Exactly, which is normal, you know, par for the course for kids. And then I could kind of see like what looked like maybe a little bullying. You know, they're like kind of holding down a kid that might have been on the smaller end of the spectrum. And I was like, okay, I didn't see any adults. And so, you know, in my brain, I'm like, how am I going to handle this? I don't work for the school.
I know how you're
so
gonna
I'm,
handle it, baby. You're an educator, man. I know what you're doing.
so
I know
all that I did was, and they're about 100 yards from me, so they were like far enough away. All I did, I'm sitting in my car and I honked my horn for a second, like, and it caught their attention. They all looked over and their bodies stiffened up and they all started like moving towards the locker rooms. That was all they needed to hear, the horn of the horn.
Just like you ain't anonymous. Like you're not anonymous. I see you.
Yeah, man.
See, I thought you were gonna pull like, you know, when I'd pull, I'd be like, young man, like the Morgan Freeman situation.
I'm not about to embarrass my kid. Yeah, I'm not about to embarrass my son. I did it from the comfort of my own vehicle, just a little like, and the kids were like, they started running.
That's what's up.
That's
what's up. I mean, listen, like they're all our kids. I don't like this idea that like, oh, this isn't my school. Like, nah, dude, I'm an educator, dude. I'll walk into any school, anytime, any classroom, and like with extreme respect to the people that are there. But if I see some trifling, like I'm gonna step in, man. I'm gonna initiate.
For sure. All our kids,
you know,
man. All our
crack
kids.
a joke. Exactly, man. Speaking of all our kids, we got the doctor. He's a real doctor, ladies and gentlemen. I want everyone to remember that shit. This man has a doctorate. His house is getting flooded, y'all. What is happening, doc?
Well, knock on wood. We're not gonna put that out there. It's not. It's not quite flooded. It is. But it is. There's a pipe. Pressure definitely burst pipes. It's cold out right now. I think it's a warm 12 degrees right now. With lows of 1, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, it's hot out here swimmingly, right? So, but I have a sump pump and something happened but we got to go behind some drywall and get some pipes fixed. They have not fixed it yet. Coming off of, you know, still drinking some warm tea and all that good stuff, but this will be wine very soon after I get this in my body. But, you know, the thrills of home ownership, I mean, it's a blessing.
Right.
It's a blessing that I can luckily take care of. I need to just get it, you know, knocked out. So we can, you know what I'm saying? If I have some travel coming up next week, I have to be in the DMV area. I think Friday, I'm going to be speaking out that way. So hopefully I can have things situated and set up because I don't want to leave while my sump pump is off. It could rain, the snow can melt. For those that don't know, sump pumps is when you have like a basement and you need water pumped up to get to your sewer line and all that good stuff. So it prevents your basement and all that good stuff from flooding. But I'm here and I'm excited for today's topic, and I'm excited for the person who produced today's show. And I am lucky because I get to play the community member today. I get to play the community member that does not work in education, because our topic is you know, it's well, I think it's gonna be an interesting topic, and I will let Omar lead us.
Hardcore, man. It's coming hardcore, man. Look, let me make this preface, right? We got David and we got Jubilee. These are two people who have done this job extensively, and they're going to know what's more about this. So I'm going to let that free reign happen when I need to. But here's what's going on today, ladies and gentlemen. You look at most major professions, engineering, architecture, law. These are professions that require a good deal of mentorship and a good deal of training, right? My sister's a lawyer. She'd tell you, like, as a baby lawyer, you get mentored and you get coached. How many years is a residency program when you're a doctor? How many years is the residency program when you're an architect? By the way, being an architect is extraordinarily difficult. You have to pass an exam that's much more difficult than even the bar. And even then, you're still an apprentice. So the question that I have for everybody here, if our babies are the most important thing on the planet to us and our kids are the most important, why are we not taking that practice into our classrooms and into our schools? So today, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the role of coaching teachers in education. And we're going to break it down for you. What is it? Why is it important? Why is there pushback against something that seems to be, I don't know, common sense, maybe to us? How are state agencies incentivizing it because of the pushback in traditional schools? And I think what it means for the profession and education in general. So what I'm going to do is get us started, talk a little bit quickly about what this is, and then I want everybody to jump in because I want you to talk about your particular experiences and why you think it's so damn important. So imagine this, ladies and gentlemen. You have a first-year teacher, and they're coming from a teacher education program. And I'm going to just be honest with you, most teacher education programs, as we've talked about on the show, sadly, are garbage. Theoretical, they're not planning, they're not preparing teachers to even do the basics of lesson planning, no classroom management, no ideology on like connecting an exit ticket to an objective. It's just garbage. So what happens is that these first-year teachers come out, and I would say irresponsibly confident about their abilities in the classroom. Then they get there, and then it is just the ass whooping of a century. I mean, ask any first year teacher, even the ones that are the most prepared, you are talking about just a general ass whooping. So to me, it makes sense that if you've got a teacher who's very fresh, doesn't really know exactly how to plan a unit, how to plan a lesson plan, how to plan structures, rituals, ceremonies in their classrooms to make things extraordinarily consistent for our kids, because our kids need consistency. Wouldn't it be logical then to have someone like me or like Jubilee or like David who knows how to do exceptional instruction in a classroom, coach that teacher so that they can model those practices? That is at its essence teacher coaching. Now, really good teacher coaching, David and Jubilee would probably support this, is done on a rubric so that the teachers know, here are the skill sets, here's what we value, this is what works, this is scientifically what works, and slowly but surely, every single 6 weeks, we're going to focus on a small chunk of this rubric and start training you up. So simple things like classroom management, connecting your exit ticket to your objective, basic premises, into scaffolding, into spiraling. And this is all insider talk for these strategies that work really well. So it's just a basic idea of like, we're going to go into the classroom, we're going to observe a teacher, and we're going to coach them to improve. But I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, and this is where I want you all to chime in, I've had an experience with a 17-year veteran of the El Paso Independent School District, and she knew what she was doing, and she was the best damn teacher that ever had taught. And we walked into her classroom, and Jubilee, you know it, it's fucking mess, dude. It's a mess. Like, it's all
I knew that was coming.
Up all over the wall. There's no organization. There's no objective. There's no idea. Like, you walk in, ask the kids, hey, what are you learning today? And they're like, I don't know this shit. I'm keeping it real. And like, when a child tells you they have no idea what they're learning in that classroom, that's a mess. Imagine coaching this teacher. I've been teaching for 17 years. I know what I'm doing. And imagine me being like, girl, you've been, I don't know, failing for 17 years. You don't have basic constructs going on. This is a problem. And the pushback was immense. So I kind of just want to open it up to you all. Like, Tell me more. What is your experience with coaching teachers? Give me a little bit more. David, Jubilee, tell me about your experiences. Cole, Doc, you've seen this 1,000 times. I just kind of want to hear what's been your general experience with this. I want to hear them stories. I want to hear about what happened when you try to coach teachers, and kind of getting into like that second premise of like, why is this so important? Why do I care so much about this? Jubilee, you got some things to say. Why don't I pass the torch to you, and then I'm going to jump in here. What the hell you think about that?
The 17-year veteran thing it
you
takes
know it. You know it too.
I knew it. I was trying to be quiet while I was over here wincing. But like, I've been blessed because for my entire career, right? So as a teacher, even though it was more about evaluation when I was a teacher, we did have built-in coaches for ELA and for math. So I was kind of exposed to that. And then I've only coached for like my entire leadership career, right? So for the past 15 years, I was blessed to be able to partner with a charter school organization who was starting to roll out, because it was at the beginning when coaching started to be mentioned, that they started to kind of, latch onto it and try to figure out how it could work. But I have seen how much of a game changer one-on-one consistent coaching provides. It's a game changer. And I'm sold out because to your opening point, it exists in pretty much every other profession, right? Even if we're talking about more, technical roles, if you're an electrician, right, or a plumber, or what have you, you have someone close by, surveilling what you're doing, right, in a supportive way, being able to guide your practice and be like, hey, put that here, or try this, or try that, or this is effective, or this is not. And I just think that making the shift from solely evaluative, because I understand that the evaluation piece still has to stay, but making that shift from evaluative to a more coaching supportive stance and structure, I think can change education.
I love it.
Period.
And I think I want to hear a little bit more about that. Maybe David's got something to say, like help our audience understand what the difference between coaching and evaluation is. So what do you think the major differences are between those two? And I'll pitch that to David, and then everyone else can come in and support. David, give me your hot take on this. And what's a big difference there for our audience?
Yeah. So the big difference, based on my experience, is coaching, like pure coaching, in its like finest form, should have much less of an element of evaluation. So like it's a place where it's an engagement, a collaboration, where a teacher is matched with another teacher or a leader to do the work of identifying goals, working towards goals, getting constant feedback, and also having like a soundboard, somebody who you could talk to about challenges in an open manner. As long as I would say, I'll say that the evaluation piece is a little bit different. And sometimes, there are like hybrid models, sometimes just as a result of like resources. Every teacher can't have a coach that is not a supervisor. So sometimes you have to do these like hybrid models where you might be getting coached by a vice principal or assistant principal or a department chair or your head of school, or that does have some sort of, does play a role in your actual teacher evaluation. And the teacher evaluations are, they look different, but, we're talking about, getting evaluated towards your progress as an educator based on benchmarks, based on observation. And so that tends to be a little more high stakes. Coaching is more ongoing and more frequent, but, I think there is a tension between, trying to mix the two together, like a pure coaching relationship versus a pure, like, I'm coming into your classroom 4 times a year. I'm going to evaluate you, and you're going to get evaluated based on what happens in 4 60-minute sessions in your classroom.
Yep.
Right.
And I gotta jump in and just quickly say this, and I want to pitch this to Doc, is that, listen, like, there are ways of melding these two. So when you think evaluation, it's like, I'm getting judged. The way we handle it ourselves is like, listen, like, and we'll get into this later in the show, the state of Texas has said, you do this, you get your teachers up to this level, we're going to pay them a lot more. So now we've incentivized teachers to say, if we can prove through evaluations that you're doing highly effective, then we're going to pay you more. And for coaching, for us, is the hard work to say, we're going to build you up to get to that pay scale. We're going to build you up to be this excellent teacher. Coaching is this idea that it's not evaluative in saying, we're going to come in and just judge you and give you a report card and that's it. No. Ladies and gentlemen, coaching is all about, hey, here are the things that you need to work on. We're good at this. We're going to get you there. Just like a football coach would train their team, like a volleyball coach would train her team. Like, this is the idea of a low stakes scenario where we're constantly improving the practice of our teachers so that they're improving the practice of our kids, because this is scientifically proven to have a large scale effect. Now, I want to pitch this to the Doc and be like, Doc, you've heard about this before. You've been in 1,000 schools before. And I kind of want to get your hot take on not just the coaching, but why is it so damn important?
Well, I've also coached educators too. And I think that, I think that was going to be my question to you all though, right? Like if I'm not playing the person that's coached somebody before, I'm just somebody from the community that's watching this, that don't work in education. Why is this something that, the community should be well aware of? Like if I don't work in teaching, if I don't work in my kids' school, if I'm just trying to make sure, like, is there a question I should be asking around that? And I guess, that's the piece that I want to like make sure that people are taking away, right? Because we got people that's in education that's watching, but we got a lot of people that is like, yo, we come to y'all the people that make this stuff that be up here in education down here where I can do something and I can rock with it. So how can parents, community members, leaders take today's conversation and be able to utilize it in a way that's going to make things easier for their kids, easier for what they're trying to do or what they're trying to accomplish?
I mean, I think first and foremost, it's student-centered. I think any effective model of coaching is student-centered. And I think ideally, right, as a parent, I can say I want to know that the teacher is receiving the support that's going to support my child and whatever they are learning. So I think just at a foundations level, it's student-centered. It is for the betterment of the instruction, school culture. It's for all the things that are connected to every child that walks through the door. And I also think that as a parent, I also want a well-developed teacher, right? And so it's cool if you have degrees and things like that, right? If we were to transfer this conversation to another profession, right? And I was saying that I was going to go to a cardiologist, right? Or use someone else. I would want to know that they are receiving some kind of training, right? Some kind of close-knit one-on-one coaching that's helping them to refine their craft. So I think it just leads to healthier, when done effectively, it leads to stronger, healthier school communities and a higher quality education for students. That's my take.
So I would ask, so I love that answer. What I would ask as a community member, right? Or as the avatar for people like Miss Toya and Jamoke, not Jamoke, because she worked in schools too, but like all in work in education. But so is it appropriate for me if my kid is struggling to say, hey, do my kids' teachers have coaches? Like, is it like
I would?
What's the appropriate, if I'm a community member or a parent, like, or is that rude to be like, hey, David, my kid's struggling in your class, brother, you have a coach? Have you thought about coaching Killer?
I can. Are you shooting it to Dave or you?
No, I'm just you welcome now. Let's
conversation.
Let me tell you
everybody
something.
jumping in here.
Y'all gonna make me take my glasses off, but
take them off, man. Toya talked about this.
I have 20/20 vision.
Miss Toya says your glasses love too. I don't know if you saw it, but she was loving your glasses. That's a big compliment from Mama Toya, man.
Well, thank you so much, Mama Toya. I appreciate it. But I can speak from experience, right? So I told you all that I took over a charter school. I was the third principal in 3 years, right? And so we really had to hit the ground running with coaching because we were behind. Our scores were low. We had extensive turnarounds, right? All the things that needed to be adjusted. And not only did I have parents that were involved, but they were also asking about teachers' degrees, right? They hated me, but whatever. Like they got over that eventually, right? Because I worked to build a relationship with them. But they were asking about teachers' degrees. They were asking about teacher development. So I think an empowered parent does ask those kinds of questions and has every right to. Now, do you need to be all up in the business talking about what score did they get and all that? No, not. I think come on, give the teacher some privacy. But I think in terms of accountability, an empowered parent very much so has the right to ask that kind of question about the type of development the teacher that's teaching their child is receiving. And I would ask if I was in that.
There you go. There you go. Like we lost Omar for a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how you felt about your answer, Jubilee. You know, scared him off.
Come back, Omar.
Yeah. Cash just had tech today, but it's all good. Go ahead, David.
I would say I'm not playing devil's advocate, but I would say some of the same where if you are a parent and your child is like struggling in a particular teacher's class, you have every right to ask the administration about the types of supports that they are providing to said teacher, right? That's your right as a parent. I think where it might get a little challenging is, there's something to be said for the sacred, like, connection or space that teachers have to work with their coaches. Like, you don't want, yeah, exactly. Parent is not going to get involved, and nor should they get involved in the inner workings of, the conversations that a teacher is having with a particular coach. However, if your child is in a particular teacher's classroom and they're struggling, you should have, there should be some way, shape, or form for you to provide that feedback that eventually should work its way into those conversations with between a teacher and his or her, their coach, for sure.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I agree.
Yeah,
But I think most teachers probably don't have coaches. I'm thinking, like, in terms of the big systems, it's a resource issue. It's a logistics issue. It's a planning issue. And then, there's a whole, it can get complicated if you're not, like, hyper focused on supporting positive, high quality instructional spaces that are supportive for young people. If that's not your mindset, if that's not like what you're in it for, the coaching thing will typically seem like an add-on or something that, like, we don't really need that. Our teachers get evaluated once a year, and this is beyond the scope of what we can do. But it's actually the one thing that has been proven to actually transform the quality of education, and not just for teachers. I'm talking about, like, all staff, at the end of the day, deserve some sort of coaching support. That's from your board chair, if you're a district, your board chair, your leaders, your directors, your superintendents, your principals, your teachers, your support staff. Everyone in the building should have access to some kind of high quality space where they're able to learn and reflect on their practice as individuals.
So I'll get technical in a second, but I want to kind of dive into this next part, which is, why is this so important? So I want to pitch it to everybody. Like, why do you think the coaching element is such an important facet? And then preemptively, I want to manage expectations, because David's already bringing this up. There's a ton of pushback. So, like, again, the 17-year teacher is a great microcosm, Jubilee, where she's like, what are you doing in my classroom? Like, you shouldn't be in here. And I'm like, that's a paradigm shift, because I'm like, it ain't your classroom. There's kids' classroom. So don't sit here and, like, act like you got a moat around your classroom. And then it's like, also, I'm like, what the hell? I'm the damn superintendent. Do whatever the hell I want. Like, you're going to tell me I can't be in the classroom? But it's that paradigm of, I can do whatever I want. I'm in charge. So my niece was just having this conversation with me. And it was funny. My niece is 12 years old. She knows the ins and outs of my organization, the school, because she's very analytical and very perceptive. And she was telling me about this science teacher of hers and about these arbitrary rules. And, the science teacher was basically, like, demanding that she retake this test immediately instead of the obligatory 2 days that she was out to study and do all the things. Like, yeah, 2 days to make up that test, that's usual practice. And this teacher's like, this is my classroom, my rules. And my niece is like, it's not your classroom, it's the principal's classroom, it's my classroom. Like, what are you talking about? And then she's like, what? And then she, like, piped in, of course. She's like, my Nino, godfather, Padrino, is a superintendent of schools. He would never allow this. But this teacher's like, this is my classroom, my rules. And again, my niece pushes back, is like, ain't your classroom. It's ours, it's the kids. It's the way that we run things. You're making arbitrary rules. It doesn't make any sense. So this gets into the facet of this pushback. But before we get into the pushback, I just kind of want to ask, and Doc's asking, why are we harboring on this? Why is this so important? Like, what is the philosophical or scientific evidence that David was alluding to be like, this is a good practice and this is what matters? So why? What's the big deal?
I mean, there's plenty of stats. Not that I have any in front of me, but it really is around increasing teacher effectiveness, right? And that's that increases student proficiency, right? How well students are doing academically. Period. It is the fastest way to help a teacher grow as a teacher in their effectiveness, right? And like that's what we want. I think for years, in our country,
And that's so
it was,
succinctly well put. So
I
well
mean,
put.
I think like we've ignored so much in education in this country for so long, and then it was like, oh snap, we're behind every other nation. What's going on? It's like for the millions and millions and millions of dollars that go into education, why do we still have babies that are not reading? And they'll say, oh, it's the socioeconomic status, and it's this and it's that, and it's like, or could it be that this child has spent the majority of their life in school with ineffective teaching, with a 17-year veteran
Exactly.
who was like, it's my classroom, who decided that she was going to not be prepared and not have a lesson plan and not think out how she was going to
That's right, David.
Question or that enduring understanding. Like, we've got plenty.
Ouch is right.
I've never experienced a teacher with more than 2 decades of experience that thought it was their way or the highway. Never.
Oh yeah.
And that is a lie. And that is a lie.
You're lucky, man. You're lucky. That's all I'm finding.
Wait, are you being facetious right now, or are you serious?
No, I'm joking. No, I know.
Absolutely said that was a lie. He absolutely said it.
I've met teachers with 3 years of experience. Like, I know everything.
Yeah, I know what I'm doing. I'm in charge of this, mother.
No,
you're like, I'm in your classroom and I feel unsafe as an adult. So we got to work on this. But I mean, I don't want to go back to the whole like teacher education piece, but I went through a state college training course or credential program in California, and I learned very little. I actually had to unlearn a lot of what I learned. And then I had like a student teaching assignment, 2 different ones, but it was literally like one semester I was at one school, the second semester I was at another school. And that teacher that I was working under, my master teacher, like had a life incident and basically was absent the whole semester. So it was just me. And I'm like, this is not okay. Teaching at Mission High School in San Francisco in the early 2000s, I was getting like physically and emotionally beat up. And then I went to work in the charter school, and we still were kind of learning the right way to do things. And over time, you start to like reflect and say like, okay, we did it this way, that didn't work. We started providing our teachers with support, coaching, and mentoring. But I will say like one of the important pieces of coaching, especially for coaching teachers and leaders of color, is that there is a connection between retention and coaching. So like if you're able to provide the right level of coaching where someone feels supported, and where they are able to demonstrably improve and their practice, right, with actual data, it's validating for the individual that's receiving the coaching, and it helps to support a higher percentage of retention, and that's a really critical thing right now. And the flip side of that is, you put an educator in an environment, an urban environment, a suburban, a rural environment, where you're dealing with, students that are coming into school with trauma or like low-income students, violent communities. I've done that work for 20 years. You all are very familiar with it. Putting a new teacher in that environment for 1 year, 2 years at the beginning of their career with no support and no coaching, that's how we lose good people, period. That will cause, that causes trauma for teachers that are in the field, and that's why we see people leave so quickly. And it's a real thing.
Yeah,
man, I'm just listening, and I'm just so as a community person, so let's say, so first you're a parent, and maybe the school ain't where it needs to be, community member, the school just not where it needs to be, and you're just really angry about it, and I think this coaching thing is going to tie into it. But first, the other things that tie into it, it might be good to have some meditative bliss in your life, one of our
Yeah.
sponsors, and I will finish my thought on the other side of this ad.
Do you feel overwhelmed with an invincible feeling of sadness? At Meditative Bliss, we will help you overcome the inexplicable stress you get from the boring routine chores and attain the solace and inner peace your soul has been yearning for. This innovative medium will be a source of the most peaceful and relaxing free music. So get ready to experience a euphoric treat for your spirit. Visit us on YouTube and Spotify anytime. Meditative Bliss. Serene your soul.
So now that you got that, so you upset, you're angry, you don't know what's happening at your school, and it's really frustrating. But now you've listened to our show and you're like, you know what, coaching, people need coaching. We got to make sure coaching is there. Here is some free game for you if you have kids in a charter school or a traditional school. I'm only not speaking on a private school because I have not worked in there, and their setups tend to be different depending on where you are. But for the most part, there's usually like a central office, even in small charter networks. When you say things like, I want to make sure that we have social work services. I want to make sure we got after school programs. And I want to make sure now that my teacher has services. And then you say, and we should take money from central office. Let me explain to you. Anything that tends to push into your school tends, in most cases, maybe not all, but in most cases, tends to be something from quote unquote central office, right? It's not just the superintendent, it's not just the C-suite people or the CAO. That's like the chief academic officer. I say that because we would run into these things in Oakland all the time where people are saying we want these different services. We want to make sure we got all this stuff, but we also want you to cut central office. The things that get cut first are those people that push in, and coaches tend to be people that push in. Now, Oakland has something called TSAs, like a teacher on special assignment, or they might have an AP slide and they might put a coach in there, right? It depends. So now as a community member, from listening to David, to Jubilee, and to Omar, it's like, okay, how can I be strategic in asking for the things that I need to ask for? And if we have like a parent teacher collaborative, or it got different names in different places, so I don't want to use something that's regional. You need to ask these questions around like, hey, what does our budget look like? A principal has ancillary funds, and once those funds are spent up, for the most part, they tend to be gone. So, not to put us in, I don't want to put parents in a difficult situation, but I want you to know that this stuff isn't free. It comes from somewhere. Now you can go in and be a little bit more informed if I'm listening to what these amazing educators are saying. Like, look, teachers can actually really gain a lot of value from having a really good coach, not just the general, like, I'm assessing you and seeing how you're doing, but like actually somebody that is coaching. I'm a big basketball fan that would say, that person was my vet. Charles Barkley did an interview, and he was talking about his vet, Moses Malone, and Dr. J. Dr. J taught him how to be a professional in the NBA, taught him that, you're good and you got skills, but now you do this and you get paid for it. This is how you need to dress. And Moses Malone was like, you're not playing because you fat and you out of shape and you lazy. Like, a coach can say that. A coach can say that. I'm just saying, your vet can say that to you. Maybe maybe the person who's leading your team can't say that to you. There are things that a coach for a teacher can probably say to a young educator that they might not want to hear from their principal or other people. That's what I'm taking as the community avatar in ways that you could take this and use this.
Well, I'd like to talk about trust. Let's talk about trust, baby.
That's not how the song goes.
That's how this song goes.
That's how this song goes, baby.
Glasses, man.
Let's talk about trust. Go ahead.
Go ahead and sip your little wine. So spicy. God.
I'm just saying, they make the lyrics. Like, you have people rocking with you.
I'm a songwriter. I just things up and finagle things sometimes. You know what I mean?
And man, Spinderella spinning in her grave. Rest in power, Spinderella.
We love you, Spinderella. Continue. That woman is alive and thriving.
She is. She's alive. Right. So trust, because we was talking about the bridging the gap or shifting from evaluative to coaching, or evaluative model
Yep.
to coaching model. And then to Dave's point, he said there's like a melding of the two. And I honestly believe that if we can learn to, as principals, right, as supervisors, whatever the supervisor role is, if we can work to build authentic relationships, or authentically build the relationships, I should say, then we can leverage those relationships in service of the work. And so, like, this is a personal / professional stat, but when I took my school over, we had about a 70% teacher retention rate, right? And when I transitioned and to move on to executive coaching, the rate was at 96%. Right. And so, and that was through the building of relationships and consistent coaching, among other things. Right. But I do think that it is possible for a principal or supervisor to also be a coach. It's actually the only way that I have coached. And I've done it through building authentic relationships and authentically building relationships, meaning I'm not trying to get anything out of you. There's transparency from jump. And in that, people learned to welcome the fact and accept the fact that, okay, this is going to be a process where I'm going to get all this support. And at some point, I'm going to need to make a judgment. But because the relationship was strong, right, then it wasn't a hard hit to hear what it is. And lastly, it was an inclusive process, right? I think that's the thing that marries the two. It's inclusive, right? Evaluation, you go in and it's like, this is, you're terrible, you're great, or whatever it is. Check, 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 check. Right. But in coaching, right, I've learned that it needs to be inclusive. So if you have someone who's coming in doing self-reflection, really learning the language, the rubric early on, and we're having conversations, you can be coached by a leader / supervisor / principal effectively.
So I want to push in really quick as you quote Salt and Pepper. Amazing. My boy just did a whole podcast on why Beyonce keeps getting snubbed at the Grammys and why the Grammys are acting a fool. But let's talk about trust really quick, which brings me to the third question. Why is there so much damn pushback against this practice? So I'll preface this really quick because I'm going to preface this with, all this like amazing knowledge, which I don't have. No, I've read a couple books, ladies and gentlemen. There's this badass book. It's called It's the Manager. You should read it. If you're managing anybody, I highly recommend it. They did a Gallup survey of over 20,000 leaders. And you're talking about hundreds of thousands of folks in the workplace. And they've essentially boiled down 12 core practices that every manager should have with their employees, with their direct reports, right? One of those 12, imagine you're surveying over 100,000 people and boiling down the very best practices. One of those 12s was, I've got someone in the workplace that is coaching me and supporting me for professional growth. So that's already one. Two, the research from Stanford and Harvard is definitive, David. It's exactly what Jubilee is saying, is that retention rates are skyrocketing, student performance is skyrocketing, just levels of general happiness skyrocket when you are coached and supported. So why, contradictory to all this evidence and 17-year teachers being like, I ain't having this, why is there so much damn pushback about this very effective practice in our school? And I love
what's the you alluded to the pushback.
Yeah.
Oh man,
huge. Oh my God.
People be
Wow.
crazy.
I know what I'm doing. Don't come in
Yes.
here. You can't
Yes.
tell me what to do. I'm in charge of this place.
So you're saying that
I've
the
been
pushback is
teaching for
coming from
20
educators
years.
that might need a coach. Like I didn't know.
Oh,
if
hell
you
yeah.
were saying
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
from-
top-
Yo,
top
man,
down,
they're straight up
everybody.
stinking the room up, and I'm like, whoo, damn. Like,
Well, we
I
got
need
to
some
explain that
deodorant. I
for
need
our
some
for
air
our everyday
freshener.
people.
Just stinking this shit up. You need coaching.
Yeah.
And they're like, I know what I'm doing. I'm like, oh, no, you don't. Oh, you know shit. So that's what's up, Doc.
Yeah, the pushback is
Crazy.
definitely real. I think if I can break it down, like one end of it should be like you're a teacher or you're a principal and you have a coach, and there's no like there's a firewall between your engagement with your coach and then the world of like evaluation and performance management, all that stuff, right? So like, this is a sacred space. I'm working with you. I'm going to tell you what I'm experiencing, what my challenges are. I'm going to be vulnerable. But you have to have trust in that. And I think a lot of times there's just a lack of trust because you have to have a very transparent system that has very clear firewalls. Like if Charles is my coach, I'm going to come to Charles with, you know, my challenges, what I'm experiencing. And if, you know, Jubilee is the executive director, you know, I don't want Charles talking to Jubilee about our conversations, maybe high level. So I think there's like the whole trust thing, which is a significant challenge. And then, you know, I think the other thing for educators is like, you know, anytime opening up your classroom, just the feedback in general can be challenging, especially if teachers, you know, I think the 17-year teacher thing is real. I've experienced it a bunch. But in general, there tends to be pushback around, you know, getting that kind of feedback that maybe teachers don't see as helpful, or maybe they just think they have it figured out when they really don't. So, yeah, teaching is a different occupation. It's not like I've worked in the corporate world, and you know, I've worked under different like performance evaluation frameworks. One of my earliest mentors, my coaches, who my board connected me with, not when I was a teacher, but in my first principalship, was a board member of mine, and he was coming out of Cisco Systems. It's a big tech company, or was it Cisco or Compaq? I'm not sure. And they had this rule of like bottom 10, like you got to like fire your lowest 10% of performers, constant like churn. And he started to apply that in our context in the school, and I'm like, we're not a tech company. This is different work. I mean, we can focus on like our lowest performers or people that need the most support, but I can't be firing 10% of my people every year, you know? So I think it's a complicated question, but the pushback is definitely real.
Agreed. I wanted to say like the foundational frame, it informs your paradigm about the work, right? So it's like, what I know when I started teaching, I stood up in front of a class of 5th graders and I was like, all right, looky here. I'm the queen bee and y'all got to listen to me. Like, I don't remember what else I said, but that was like my opening speech. Right. And so you kind of think that you're supposed to know it, or you can whisper and ask the teacher across the hall who's also going to think that you're supposed to know it. Don't you dare go knock on that principal's door. She is busy. I know we haven't seen her in 4 months. That's because she's busy. She's answering emails. She doesn't need to be in the hallways. So it's just like, that is the pattern that we are, you know, working to shift. And it's like, yes, we are human servicers, right? We are in the service sector, supposed to be, but we were not. We're just most recently starting to provide service one to another, right? And that's the truth. Like, I think that people got into education, you know, for the right reasons, but we didn't necessarily have systems for development, right? Like true development. And then lastly, I'll say, like, now we're shifting to that place. And I think the pushback really does come from fear, right? Like, it comes from fear. You are challenging a really deep-rooted belief that I have, that I'm supposed to know it, right? And so now I have created like my own space, and it could be wrong as 2 left shoes, but it's my way. And so I want to hold on to this. So I have been in very many conversations, coaching conversations. The first time feels like an Oprah session, like a set, because you really have to go deep down and get to what's holding people back from being able to have a vulnerable conversation about practice with another human being.
Yeah. And there are several books that talk about this. And like, look, I talk about these books a lot. Like, if you've never read The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, The 5 Temptations of the CEO, it's the same book, same parable. But at the end of the day, it's what Jubilee was talking about, David was talking about, like, there is a huge level of trust that has to be done. But this is my major, like, impetus to all this is that y'all are right in terms of how are we developing relationships with our teachers and with our people. Education's so weird, right? It's like you hire this teacher and then you put them into a classroom and then you never see them again. And like, dude, we all did that. Like I taught at the traditional schools. I was visited by administrators, for observation or for evaluation once, maybe twice a year. Granted, like what I had going on in my classroom was insane. So I had people from the school districts all coming to check out what's going on, but they were there just to like see practices, not in coaching, not in evaluative senses. So really the visitation was so small, and we developed this culture, and it's like, what in the world? Like, no wonder people feel alienated, and then they get very like worrisome when someone comes to their classroom because they're like, why are you here? Are you judging me? Are you trying to fire me? Like, it's always the worst ideas because we haven't developed within the educational system the apparatus and the systems, not just to do good coaching, but just like the humanizing component of it all, of getting to know people and building trust. So from top down, our entire model is coaching. So I coach our CAO, I coach the C-suite, I coach the principals, and I'm talking like straight up coaching. Weekly meetings, what are you working on? What are your goals? How do I help you through it? How do I develop your skill set? And it's weird because like I'm developing people like significantly older than me. And that's okay because everyone's in it to win it, to know we all have something to learn. Now, what's going on right now in Texas is that this system is highly incentivized. So it's called the teacher incentive allotment. And ladies and gentlemen, you're talking anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000 more on your paycheck as a teacher if you're in this coaching model and you're building your skill set. So this is amazing for the state of Texas, of all places, right? Texas, that they're like, we're going to come in your classrooms and we're going to coach you, but we're going to dump a ton of money on those good practices, therefore incentivizing teachers to come in and say, oh, so the more I grow, the more I get paid. Like, yeah, by a ton. Teachers getting paid $90,000, $100,000 if they're at the top tiers. So I kind of want to throw it to you all, like, besides incentivization, what are some of the systems that you all have seen that have helped with this coaching model? But I also want to parlay into like, what does this mean for us in the profession? What does this mean for us in general? Because, we're at the 52 mark, Doc. We had a hell of a show. We're already at closing thoughts. Look at this. Doc got to sip.
It's all good. You brought up a new thought, brother. You brought up a new thought. So let's go ahead and tackle it, man. Ask that question again. We got you.
Yeah. So the question is ultimately like, what is, besides incentivizing financially, what are the steps that we need to take to get this done? And what does this mean for the profession?
I mean, I will say quickly, I think school leaders should consistently be working to like normalize the practice of just observation in general, all kinds of observation. So teachers should be working in spaces where they feel that observation is part of their work. Sometimes it's evaluative, sometimes it's not, but they're always getting something back that helps them to improve their practice. From the leader perspective, the model that I kind of grabbed onto early, if y'all are familiar with Kim Marshall, was this framework for the mini observation for the principal or executive director or superintendent. So instead of doing these like really high stakes, like I'm going to come into your classroom on November 13th and I'm going to observe you for 10 minutes, you better be on point, dog and pony show. Shifting the culture of schools to more frequent and actually shorter observation. So if you're a principal, you can walk into a classroom for 5 minutes and collect a tremendous amount of data. And like just making sure that loop, that information feedback loop is open. So teachers expect it, they get feedback. You might not always meet with them, but they're getting constant feedback on their practice from the principal. And that can happen outside of regular coaching. So it's something that we haven't talked about a lot in the show, but I think one way to shift that culture is for the leader to take on this kind of role of being in classrooms more often, obviously in an evaluative sense, because you are the principal, but this like the power of the mini observation, I believe holds a lot of promise, both for teachers, for students, and can shift culture within schools.
Outstanding. Jubilee?
Yeah. So I have a couple of things. I got 4 things. One, plant the seed by normalizing frequent classroom visits.
Yeah.
When I worked in buildings where there was like lots of pushback, we started to kind of massage the topic by saying, hey, we're going to come in. Right. And of course, that was preceded by non-academic, non-instructional conversations for the purpose of relationship building. Secondly, I would say start to grow your pipeline. Teachers are coaches too. Right. By the time I moved on and transitioned from my school, I had teachers that could go in and give their peers feedback just as effectively as any of my leaders, myself or anybody on my leadership.
Yep.
Right. And so start thinking about the gems and jewels that already exist in the building that you are running, in the district that you're running, because that is also creating the future. And then thirdly, if you have enough people, on hand, then you can think about creating a hybrid model. Right. So again, you can have more coaches that are not evaluators, right? But you can have both coaches that are evaluators, coaches that are non-evaluative, and whatever's in the middle. And then lastly, begin to shift your hiring look-fors. Right. For me, the game begins at hiring. What are the characteristics that I'm looking for in teachers and in leaders that I'm hiring? That's going to tell me that they are reflective, that they're collaborative, that they're able to take feedback. And so I had a 3-round process. And those questions and scenarios that were in there really pushed on that point. Is this person going to be able to take feedback? Do they understand the importance of both giving and receiving feedback and coaching?
Mm.
I mean, before we get into Doc's final thoughts, hire us. Did you hear that? Come on, man. This is the breakdown, the South Star Classroom. We can help you. We got you. Doc, any final
Wait, was
thoughts
that
on
their
this
final
subject?
thoughts? I don't want to step on their final thoughts, man. They gotta have some more. I don't know.
We would come back to any other final thoughts, but it's your turn, my brother.
I
What do you
say
got
this.
first?
I'll just park this into my final thought. I think as a parent, as a community member, it's a lot of politics there. It's a lot of things that you don't really control, right? But I think understanding the importance of these things, and I do want community members, especially parents, to start being buyers of their school. And what I mean is you're asking questions. So you might be asking something around like, yo, where do these teachers rank on whatever ranking that there is? And that might be arbitrary for whatever. And are they able to receive coaching? Here's what I would say to you, though, as a parent or community member, what you do control, because you don't control what admin is doing. You don't control what teacher likes coaching and which ones don't. I will say, like they told Charles Barkley, find you a vet. If you have a friend in that school that knows how to navigate, that you see getting what they need for their kid, that might be better at talking to teachers, might be better at organizing stuff there, might be better at going to principals, I would say ask that person to be your vet, your mentor, your coach. You don't have to call them that. But I think that, we all could use a push in the right direction, something, a person that we can bounce things off of, and somebody that can tell us, like Moses Malone, the great Moses Malone told the would-be great Charles Barkley, is you not playing because you fat and you lazy. Like, this is what you need to do. You need to do X, Y, and Z. And again, that might sound really harsh, and that should, and that might be harsh. It could be harsh coming from somebody else. But when you are Charles Barkley and Moses Malone is the best thing smoking, and he has taken time to talk to you and to train you and to coach you, the rest of that story was Moses Malone also told him, we're going to lose this weight together. Let's just start with 10 pounds. I'll do it with you. And Moses Malone met with him before practice, after practice, took him on weekends. And then he said, let's do 10 more. Let's do 10 more. And they did that, and he lost 50 pounds. When he lost the 60th, he didn't feel as strong. And Moses was like, well, let's go back up to 10. Let's go back up 10. This is the place that you play at. You need somebody, whether you teacher, parent, principal, podcast, whatever, right? Host, whatever, right? Like, you need somebody that's been there before, that can give you a different perspective, that you allow to talk to you and that you can be honest with. So that's my final thought. Because I didn't want parents and community members listening to this being like, well, I ain't got no power in none of that stuff. You got power in who you bring and who you ask to help you grow in whatever way that may be, and we all can grow.
Absolutely, man. Well said. And for Toya, like, you're absolutely right. Like, parents have this incredible insider knowledge, but parents also need to be able to ask, as David and as everyone astutely said, what are you doing and what resources are you garnering in order to make a systemic change in my child's life? And if you're not hearing good answers about, well, I meet with my coach weekly, this is what's going on, this is the rubric I'm working on, these are the skill sets that I have, these are the goals that I have, then you should be worried. You should be, because everyone needs to be looking out for one another in the professional realm. So if someone comes to our school and they ask an assistant principal, what are your goals? What are you doing to improve? You're going to get the exact same answer. Well, I'm being coached by this person in order to improve these practices. This is where I'm needing an immense amount of support on how I handle these conversations, on how I handle data, on how I'm prepared for these conversations with teachers. That should be all the way up the line, all the way up the line. And any good leader with their girth should be able to tell you the exact same thing, that like, I'm consistently seeking self-improvement myself as the leader. How am I improving my skill set? How am I meeting with that vet? How am I talking to other people that have been here that are going to give me the hard news, you know? And that's incredibly important, because it goes back to what Jubilee said, is a mind frame of, are we receptive to growth? Because if you're not, at the end of the day, the person that you're hurting most is your child. And that's unacceptable. So that's my final thought. David, Jubilee, you got some final thoughts for us as we close out the show?
That's it. I am complete.
That's amazing. Beard and Knowledge, you got anything for us?
You're muted. He's saying the greatest things ever, but we missed
Sorry.
it.
Always,
Yeah.
always
You have to do it again.
things ever, man.
Nothing great.
Man. You know,
Nothing great. No, I'm good. I think the only thing, it's interesting. I didn't think about this like parent piece, which I should have been thinking about. But yeah, if you're a parent, you have every right to ask your school, maybe not your teacher, but like the administration, about what kinds of supports your child's teachers are receiving, right? You're not going to be involved in the day-to-day work, but you do have a right to ask and also propose, you know, things that you think might help your child's teacher. That is 100% fundamentally your right as a parent. So that's what I got to say.
very much so. And it normalizes it, much like, you know, Julie was saying. So, ladies and gentlemen, man, that's it. That's our show. It went by so quickly. So I want to say, on behalf of the Beard of Knowledge, David Castillo, on behalf of the real doctor, Dr. Charles Cole III, this man is a prolific writer, ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful, the amazing, the most talented Jubilee Ransom up in Ransom Town, and my broke ass, Omar Yanad. Thank you so much for being with us. As always, ladies and gentlemen, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook. We're going to be coming to your podcast. Shout out to the via Stream Network. Thank you so much for hosting us on Roku. That's amazing. And thank you for always joining us. 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. Catch us on all the Twitters and the Instagrams. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the South Star Classroom, have a great weekend. Take care, everybody.